No one spoke. There was no need. The threat of the Eldrazi presented a simple choice. Lay down your weapons and die for nothing, or hold them fast and die for something. Magic the Gathering. Time of Heroes. The Daily Grind, Chapter 159. What the shit was that? Elle demanded, practically flinging herself down the thin stairway that led to her home's upper floor. The front door was still hanging open, though most of the shattered glass had been swept up, a fact that the still shoeless James was grateful for. "You all heard that, right?" she asked in a panicked pitch. "Sounded like an explosion," Anesh said. He, along with James and Alana, were standing on the front lawn discussing how to proceed. Anesh had his arms folded, but it didn't seem like the distant blast had changed his mood one way or the other. James nodded in agreement with his boyfriend. "I'd guess about 6 miles away," he added. "How can you possibly know that?" Alana sounded more amused than she was really confused. "How do you know how to take care of a peregrine falcon?" James rebutted. Alana glared at him with her eyes, but her voice betrayed laughter. "I don't know, dumbass. How do I know how to take care of a peregrine falcon?" "Right, sorry." James threw his hands up into the night air. "I'm doing really bad at this. I'm sorry." None of their antics deterred Elle. "What about the explosion?" she repeated herself. "What does it mean? Are you going to do anything about it?" "We're still deciding how to question the prisoners," James said. "Also bringing Alana up to speed on everything, and me up to speed on how we are all dead if we don't solve this problem in 20 hours. His voice cracked a bit at the end, real panic overriding his snarky attitude. "We're not all dead, we're just—" Anesh trailed off. "Okay, I don't have a good follow-up for that." "Explosion!" Elle yelled at them, loudly enough that a short moment later Jean pulled open an upstairs window and hissed at her to be quiet. "Explosion!" she repeated, softer but still yelling. "Elle, it's all going to shit," James sighed. "Maybe it's because the brute squad in there failed to capture Ava, maybe it's because the gatekeeper showed up, or maybe this was just always the timeline and we got caught up in it, but it's getting bad." "I think a lot of people have tried to leave at once," Anesh said. "I don't know if they knew why, but when I went to meet the last line—" "Don't call it that," James shook his head. "It doesn't get a cool name. It's the gatekeeper." "The gatekeeper, then? There were a ton of cars lined up trying to get to the highway. That was just an hour or two ago." Anesh shook his head. "For some reason, everyone knows to bail." "I think the biggest problem is the dungeon is snapping up territory out here, which is what attracted the old gatesman." James grit his teeth. "But it doesn't seem like it's spawning anything out here. It's just casually existing, and declaring the town our property hasn't worked." "You tried that?" "I try that with every city, even if there isn't a dungeon," James smiled. Alana cut in. "So why is the explosion? I'm not going to freak out like her." She jerked her head toward Elle. "But I would kind of like to know what's blowing up." "I have no idea," James answered. "We should go ask." "Aren't we supposed to be the professionals at this?" Alana challenged James. "I don't actually remember, but it does feel like 'I don't know' isn't the answer I want to hear." She paused. Did she not remember? There was that feeling again, that warm buzz of memory just at the edge of her perception. "We've done this before," she stated quietly. "We have," James agreed. "Do you remember where?" "I want to say high school, but no, we went to school together. And then a different school." Alana grabbed at her forehead. "Ow!" "Don't push it," James told her, holding back from reaching out to give her a comforting touch that she wouldn't receive well. "Okay, we need a plan, now." He got them back on track. "Does anyone know how to do an interrogation?" "I've got an idea," Anesh said. "Of how to interrogate people?" "Of how we can interrogate these people," Anesh replied. "Alana, you can read minds, right?" "No." James blinked. "What?" Nope, Alana added. I also want to double up on the what, Elle said. If you take perception from me, Anesh clarified, then your empathy ability can pick out details to the extent that it may as well be surface-level mind reading, correct? Okay, fine, Alana conceded. But don't call it mind reading. I don't like how that feels. To be clear, we could all read their minds with a router and a length of cable, James pointed out. I'm glad you have an idea that isn't just that, but I just want us to be aware that if it's a choice between the lives left in this city and the mental privacy of those assholes, I know what side I'm on. Noted, but this isn't that unethical. And it's going to work, because we've got 6 whole prisoners to work with. Elle, go bring us one of them, while I explain cold reading and word association to these two. Reluctantly, Elle ducked back into the house and headed to the living room, where they'd tied up the people who had come to kidnap Ava not even an hour ago. Outside, James, Anesh, and Alana stood in a loose circle. After Anesh explained his plan, none of them knew what to say exactly. How did you go about taking a quiet moment before the end of the world to talk about your feelings? Even if that apocalypse was a local one, it was still kind of daunting. Alana kept stealing glances at Anesh, though, and at a certain point, James just had to ask, "You seem like you've got something Anesh-related on your mind. What's up?" Anesh, hearing his name, glanced up from the notebook he was writing a list of keywords in. "Ah, right," Alana said, looking away a little awkwardly. "Out of curiosity, do you have a brother?" Anesh quirked an eyebrow and frowned. "No, Oh, no, there's copies of me. Did James not tell you that? Or do you remember something else?" "I told her, but she didn't believe me," James helpfully added. "But yeah, what did you remember, out of curiosity?" To his intense amusement, Alana blushed, bright red, and deliberately did not make eye contact with either of them. In her head, the memory that had cracked the surface of her mind as she stood there with the others was a moment of intensely intimate passion. Alana replayed a scene of having 4 hands belonging to the same person holding her, warm skin pressed against her own, tangled blankets and dim light, and gleefully explored lusts. She didn't really need that distraction right now, so instead she just said, "I don't know, a conversation." "Really?" James grinned at her. "No," Alana replied, "but I don't want to get into it right now." And instantly James let the grin retreat and nodded. "Okay," he said. "Sorry, won't push it. When you're ready, you can talk about it." "You two are so fucking weird," Alana muttered. Anesh cleared his throat. "How so?" he asked. "Because I think I'm the normal one." "You have clones," James pointed out. "And I'm a wizard." "I'm a wizard too," Anesh protested. Alana cut their friendly banter off. "You're too fucking nice," she said, almost grumpy about it. "People aren't this nice." "You only think that because you've been hanging around with the wrong people," James told her. "Or rather, okay, that's not fair. I think a lot of people are assholes because we don't properly teach people how to be kind, and then you compound that with the massive stressors of daily life and a lot of unexamined historical context, and it all builds up and—" "See, this is what I'm talking about," Alana interrupted him. "You're even trying to understand why people suck, so you aren't mean to people who suck. That's weird." If I don't, how will I ever be able to help them stop sucking?" James replied. "Also, I hate to cut this short, but our first victim is here." He motioned to where Elle was ordering a hobbled prisoner down the wooden front steps of her porch. She'd taken the time to fetch her shotgun and kept the middle-aged man at about a full arm's length away, making it highly unlikely he could get away with anything. "Give me the notes." He held out his hand to Anesh, who slapped the notepad into it. What followed was the strangest opening salvo in an interrogation that James could imagine. Elle had picked out the guy who looked the least important and also had the most broken bones from Camille, so he wouldn't have to spend too much time on this. With Alana watching carefully and Anesh blinding himself to effectively double her ability to do so, James read off single relevant keywords from the notebook provided. "Road," he said flatly. No response, just mild confusion. "Monsters. Sons." The man flinched as he made the connection. Alana spoke quietly. Fear of us for someone else, undercurrent of protective instinct. He won't say anything because he's worried about hurting someone he worships. Nodding as if he understood perfectly while Anesh wrote that all down in a separate notepad, James continued. Property, acquisition, missing persons, murders. That got a reaction quickly. I didn't kill anyone, the man, no, actually younger than a man, he was closer to a kid from James's reckoning, protested. He was probably older than James, but James still labeled him a kid in his head at hearing the whiny voice. To be fair, his arm was in a makeshift splint right now, which couldn't feel very good. Half-truth, Alana said. He won't say what he knows. You aren't the police, the idiot said, as if that protected him. The Horizon won't... You can't do anything to me. James blinked and almost went off script. If someone said that to him, he'd find it reassuring, but for most people, the police would be the safe option. Random people with superpowers, not so much. So he just continued. Blackout, communications, cut off. Nothing. The last line of defense. Nothing, just confusion. Alana kept her mouth shut too, so James kept going. Tradition, prophet, ritual. Ah, he's panicking, Alana informed him. He knows something he's not supposed to, and he's terrified to say it. A ritual? James said, eyebrows raised as he stood over the kneeling figure on the dried-out front lawn. No, the ritual. Would you tell us what you know? The man looked up at James with pleading eyes, tears welling in the corner of them. I can't, he said, quietly now. He'll kill me. The mechanic will kill me, and I have a family, please. Quiet, James said. Not mean, just firm. Then he nodded to Elle. Take him to the backyard. Let the others see that he's alive, but don't put him back with them. He paused and then added with a sigh. And bring out the next one. She nodded and hauled the guy to his feet, struggling a bit as her untrained muscles protested the limply unresisting mass of their prisoner. All right, Anesh said as he pulled his senses back to himself. 2 new keywords, something to focus on. You really think any of them will fall for this? Alana asked. I'm doing my best Sean Spencer impression, but that guy seemed more impressed by the broken bone than any of our shit. I'll bet you an orb the next one gives us something worthwhile, Anesh said. A what? You'll like it, James informed her. Also, okay, seriously? I'm sorry I'm handling this badly. I really want to fall back into old habits, but that isn't what you need right now, so just let me know when I make you uncomfortable, okay? Alana barked out a laugh. A different laugh than James knew from her. Kind of a harsher, angrier laugh. What I need? All I need is to know who I am. You're helping in your own dumb way. I'd like to think I'm contributing, Anesh added. In a totally different dumb way. He and James shared goofy grins with each other. Alana just sighed. You two are way too sappy. Here comes Elle. Ready? Ready. This man, who'd escaped mostly unharmed due to Anesh pointing a gun at him and telling him to sit down, instead of letting Camille break his legs, was older than the last. Before James could even start listing words, he tried to take control of the situation. You won't get away with this, was his first incorrect assumption. Just give us the girl and you can all still leave. None of them bothered answering. James just sighed, while Anesh pushed his perception back across the attic link toward Alana, who caught it and opened razor-sharp eyes to watch the proceedings. Horizon, James said. Instantly Alana tapped him on the shoulder. He knows something he hasn't told the others. Deep greed. Guilt, too. Buried under the greed. Those idiots want to protect the damn thing, the man shouted. Like it's some kind of nature preserve or endangered animal. But it's property, damn it. What's the point in owning property if it doesn't make you money? James considered shooting him right there, but he restrained himself. It was mostly a passing sarcastic joke of a thought anyway. Missing persons, he said instead. Empty city. Murders. Self-defense, came the snapped protest. Lie, Alana growled. The mechanic, James said, eyes hard but voice even. He'll kill you when he finds you, the man snorted and spat at James' feet. You can't stop him, so it doesn't matter. We'll be rich, and you'll be dead. The ritual. The man's face betrayed enough that Alana didn't even need to bother chiming in. When's it happening? James asked directly for a change. The older man just laughed at him. A smoker's laugh, rough and rude. Supposed to be as soon as we had the kid. The man shifted on his knees, trying to get comfortable and failing. Guess he got impatient, he said with a flinch as a distant crash of metal and glass sounded. Tell us where to find the mechanic, James ordered bluntly. Nah, the man settled back on his heels. You'll have to offer me... We're done here, James cut him off, channeling everything he remembered from Nate about how to maintain control of an interaction like this. Apologies for the inconvenience, but my friend here is going to render you unconscious. At James's wave, Alana stepped around behind him and grabbed the man in a sleeper hold. Probably a little harder than was required, but it didn't take too long for the sputtering struggles to stop as he passed out. Okay, James said, doing a quick review. These guys are obviously a cult, worshipping the road, which they call the Horizon. Good name, by the way. The mechanic is, I'm guessing, their leader? Even odds there's some kind of rogue dungeon life, Anesh offered. Hey guys, what are we doing with this dude? Elle asked, towing the unconscious man on the ground. Oh, carry him to the back deck and bring the other guy in. We'll make a group offer to the prisoners. Elle pursed her lips. Offer of what? She asked. We aren't killing them or anything, right? Nah, James said. We just need to know who their leader is. Well, where their leader is. Okay, I feel like I'm 2 steps behind. Elle took a deep breath. What exactly are we supposed to be doing? James let out a small noise of recognition as Alana nodded along with Elle's words. Okay, so... The last line of defense is... Yes, Anesh, I said it, is here because the dungeon took territory outside its own borders and has been spreading outward. Since, it obviously doesn't give a shit about the people in danger, the obvious fix to this is just to reclaim the territory, which I guess it can't do. We've run into this before and tested it a bit with the Ascent. Dungeons have a very, very hard time holding on to bits of earth without something anchoring them. Now, that could be the real estate agents owning all the lots and having a claim on them, and if any of the people in there are those people, we'll ask them to give it up. But it's way more likely it's all been moved to the head of their cult. Why? Elle asked. Why join a cult anyway? It's not the 1800s. James shrugged. I mean, you saw the first kid. Alana, what was his main emotion? Awe, Alana answered instantly. Everything was tainted with it. Dude probably loves the... I'm sorry, you said dungeon several times, and I know you explained it, but I'm having a really hard time with the word. James smiled and bit back a laugh. No worries. So, find the leader, wrest control from him, solve the immediately impending doom, and then worry about the other loose ends. Yeah, 'cause there's a lot of loose ends, Anesh grumbled. Like whatever is happening to Jean and Iva. And right now, the loose end is this guy's legs. Anesh, get this guy's legs, James said, grabbing the unconscious man's arms. We can sort out the rest later, but we are on a time budget right now, and I've only got so many explanations in me before the head injury and lack of real rest catch up. He and Anesh awkwardly walked the unconscious body through the front hall and kitchen of Elle's childhood home, drawing concerned looks and angry yells from the other 4 prisoners tied up in the living room. Alana silenced their yells with folded arms and a glare, but they still gave worried or infuriated stares at James and Anesh carefully setting their interrogation victim on the back porch. The unhappy looks didn't stop when they brought the first kid back inside, either. All right, James said, ignoring the fact that Elle's mom was calmly making a second pot of coffee behind him in the kitchen while this was going on. Here's the deal. You killed Mark, one of the bound women accused him harshly. Wait, hang on. James stretched his enhanced memory but couldn't quite remember. Wasn't Mark the other guy? The realtor from earlier? Are there two Marks in your... He raised a questioning eyebrow. One of the prisoners actually answered. It's really confusing, yeah, the man said awkwardly. Okay, hilarious, but no, Mark's not dead. Either of them, James sighed. Here's the deal, he repeated. You lot have pissed off something way too powerful and way too callous. We have about 18 hours before people like the woman who wrecked your shit without even trying start collapsing buildings and killing people. We have that long to figure out what's gone wrong and undo it. James saw disbelief on some of their faces. I know about what you call the horizon, he said, and instantly many of them perked up. I have been there. I have explored it. Nice place. The last comment was not made without purpose. As soon as he said it, Alana stepped forward and pointed. Those three, she said, singling out the ones with the right emotional profile. James looked at them, one by one. You care about it, he said. That's not bad. To be clear here, caring about a place like that isn't bad at all, though treating it like a holy site's a little uncomfortable. He winced, thinking about how it would be if somebody used the sewer that way. But I'm not here to punish you for that. What I'm here for is to protect the people of this city who are more or less defenseless against some of the nastier mind magic you guys have going on. So, I'm going to ask this once. Are you willing to help me find a solution that leaves everyone alive, or are you going to get out of my way? There was a long silence, broken only by the bubbling hiss of the coffee pot and a small muttered thank you as James took an offered cup from Marjorie. We were supposed to bring her to life, one of the younger of the tied-up men said. Kirk, the woman next to him snapped harshly, her older voice acidic. What? The man had the look of somebody who was constantly being told he looked younger than he actually was, and he had a kind of bitterness to go with it. Gonna kick me out or something? We're all going to jail anyway, who cares? He looked back at James, anger obvious in his eyes. We weren't supposed to hurt anyone. We were just doing what we needed to bring her back to life. Her? James inquired. Horizon, the older woman said, with the reverently solemn tone of a true believer. The lady of travel. Years of work, so much effort, so much waiting, and all of it undone at the last step because of you. If you call me a meddling kid, I'm adding you to the nap time pile on the porch, James promised. Last step? He asked. The vessel, the young man said. The little girl. The mechanic told us we just had to wait, that she'd arrive in due time. He didn't tell us that we'd be kidnapping her, he snarled. Yeah, well, kinda late to pretend you give a shit about that, huh? Elle asked glibly, kicking her feet up on the coffee table and taking a relaxed posture on the couch that still let her keep the gun at hand. Language, young lady, her mom chastised her from the kitchen. James smothered a grin. All right, everyone shut up. Let me put this together. He pressed his fingertips into each other, tapping his steepled hands against pursed lips. Okay, so, the mechanic of yours discovers the road, horizon, then recruits all of you? A few nods, even if they were reluctant ones. Okay, and this was years ago, but he has a plan, some kind of grand work. So you all get started, buying up property, getting jobs in the city government or police, and then you settle in to keep rolling along, enjoying the wealth and power until it's time to finish the work, right? No one argued. Not even the youngest of them, who could have been a teenager when this all started. Hell, he might be one of the other cultists' kids for all James knew. So that brings us up to recently, when Ava and her mom roll into town, and for some reason, your boss singles her out as the culmination of his plans, starts the ritual that needs her, and attracts outside attention. He didn't say that he was pretty sure he knew why. What I don't get is, why wait until tonight to kidnap her? What does it matter to you? The angry woman snarled. You are nothing in the grand plan of... Alana casually stepped forward, and with a satisfying little snick sound, tore off a strip of duct tape and affixed it over the woman's mouth. A second one followed to secure the first. Yes, thank you. James did grin now. Any other answers? We did try, the guilty kid said, now actually crying silently. We kept trying, but the last week, every time we've gone to where they're supposed to be, they've been gone. So, he told us to wait until he could manifest a tracker to help us. Gone? James glanced over at Anesh, who looked back at him with wide eyes. His boyfriend had already put the pieces together. Because Ava and Jean were busy walking toward the road, Anesh said. Because it was calling to them. Alana made an interjecting noise. Is that not just a coincidence? She asked. I know it's not, but tell me why. Because it can't talk to people, James said, in realization. Not like we can, or even its creations can. So if it wants to get them to move on short notice... He rubbed at his forehead, his head still aching from the events of the day. It only had one option, probably. Anesh punched a fist into his own palm. It did what it could to make sure they didn't get their hands on Ava. Why? One of the cultists that had been listening in yelled at them. Why? We were trying to help. He struggled in vain against the ropes holding his hands. We were just trying to help. The mechanic was showing us what we needed to do to save her. And there it was. James sighed and shook his head. In any other circumstances, he'd hire that guy in a heartbeat and give him some way to actually help. Maybe he still would, later, but here, right now, all he could think was how stupid these people were. A random person, or possibly a friend or a relative of theirs, had shown up one day, probably thrown around some magic, declared themselves a prophet of a sleeping god, and they had gone along with it. And some of them, obviously, painfully, believed in their cause, in the splendor and beauty of the dungeon, but no matter what they believed, they had one fatal flaw in everything they were doing. None of them could ask their god if this was what it wanted. Even the most worshipful of the cultists were still clearly terrified of the mechanic, of who he was or what he'd become, or perhaps just the casual power he commanded. And it was through his mouth that every word of their religion was filtered. And so, at the end of the day, the people who thought they were saving a lost god were spending their nights trying to kidnap a child because it seemed like the right thing to do. You fucking idiots, James whispered. Alana got it too, suddenly, and she was a lot less subtle than he was. You fucking idiots, she yelled, looking like she wanted to start kicking faces in. From the table behind her, Rufus looked like he was about ready to join her, or at least cheer her on. You didn't ask? Okay, James said, calmly laying a hand on Alana's shoulder without thinking about the gesture. Here's the deal. You're going to tell us where the mechanic is. We are going to go unfuck this mess. Yes, I'm sorry, Ms. Chase. And we'll go from there, okay? We don't have to tell you anything. Another snick of the roll of duct tape silenced another dissenter. Anyone else? James asked. It only took one more satisfying duct tape noise before one of the more cooperative prisoners told them where they were going. Union Street Auto Body, an actual literal mechanic, which shouldn't have surprised James at all, and yet somehow did. The three of them, and also Elle, James realized he'd been quietly ignoring her, regrouped on the front lawn. Ganesh followed them out, alighting on Anesh's shoulder again, and drawing a small flinch from Alana as the drone passed her. Rufus got as far as the porch, but didn't wander out to the lawn where he might get underfoot. The neighborhood was dark, James realized. Darker than it should have been. The street lamps were on, casting their ancient orange glow into the pavement from bulbs that would one day be updated to harsh white LEDs, but for now they kept burning their warm color. But the windows of every other house on the street were just blank, empty, no lights anywhere. Does anyone else live here? He asked Elle suddenly. No, she said. Mom said the last neighbor moved away a month ago. Of course, James sighed. Alright, what do we have to work with? Well, your rifle got fucked up in the crash. It doesn't look warped or anything, but it won't fire, and I don't actually know how to perform field maintenance on these things, Anesh told James. Aside from that, we have roughly 1.5 sets of body armor, 2 swords, 5 cars, a motorcycle that Elle's mom has for some reason. Yeah, I'm starting to worry my mom might be cool, Elle shook her head sadly. And then whatever magic we have to bring to bear. Telepads are out, but we do have 1 blue from it, along with about 100 yellow and 20 purple orbs from the trunk. The lunchbox did survive, by the way. I know that's important to you. It really is, James confirmed. What about Skulljacks? Do we have braids? We have 2, but no Wi-Fi in the area, no host device. Means we probably can't fully merge. What about using my phone as a Wi-Fi hotspot? Anesh shook his head. You are overestimating how much power your phone has, and also how much signal your phone has, with the towers down. Also, Alana added, you're assuming your phone is still in one piece. Oh, not again. James checked his pockets for the first time since the car had flipped over, and found them devoid of phone, but containing a few new holes where sharp, jagged metal and plastic had cut through. That's super. Also 5 cars? Well, there's Elle's magical vehicle, there's whatever monstrosity you drove here, and then there's the 3 that we now own by right of violence from our prisoners, Anesh listed off. Also, technically, our car should be fine by now, if the car-specific health potion has done its job, but it will be upside down. There was the sound of one of the upstairs windows opening, and a second later a dull thud as Camille joined them on the lawn. Where have you been? James asked her with raised eyebrows. Also, nice entrance. Upstairs, she answered, without actually providing any information. Have your questions borne answers? James and Alana filled her in. The cult, the mechanic, everything they'd just learned. She nodded once. Interesting. You are proficient at information collection, she said to Anesh in that distant, dry tone. Almost an Auser. Thank you? He glanced over at James and they shared a shrug. So far it's mostly just been keeping ourselves in the right place and letting answers reveal themselves. Any thoughts? Camille frowned at him. I am here to observe, not assist. That's not what you were doing earlier, Anesh pointed out to her with a bitter anger. You can apparently observe just fine while you're flinging people into bushes and breaking arms. That was different. Lie, Alana said, suddenly and very surprised by her own revelation. You're lying. Why? She looked closer at Camille. You could fix this whole problem by yourself, but you haven't yet. Anesh said you punched a hole in a truck, but now you're pretending you don't have to do anything? I have my task, Camille told her, clear anger showing through. But also, to Alana, it wasn't just anger. There was something else there, too. Trepidation. Anxiety. She had her orders, but for the first time she was worried they weren't enough. Or worse, maybe they were wrong. I will observe. No more. Neither will I join you in the center of this hostile domain. I owe you no explanations. You cannot force me regardless, no matter what my father thinks of your potential. James was starting to dislike Camille, whatever she happened to be, but as he opened his mouth to be mean to her, Alana held an arm out in front of him and spoke first. You don't seem like you're used to being scared, she said in a quiet tone, like she was willing calm into the world, speaking to a scared, skittish animal. So you may not understand what that feeling in the bottom of your gut is, but none of us are going to interpret it as weakness if you tell us what has you worried. A long quiet then, where the main noise was mostly just Camille slightly growling at them as she gave Alana a cold glare. And James spoke up. It's the mechanic's plan, isn't it? He asked. You were fine helping Anesh in small ways before, but you heard that, and now you've gone back to the whole observe and report thing. So what about it bothers you? He puzzled it out aloud, mostly for his own benefit, connecting the strings in his mental map. It can't be the dungeon territory expanding. You're literally here to deal with that. So it must be something about the ritual itself. Or is it just the end result? The idea of a dungeon in a human body? Is that... That's it, Alana confirmed, reading the smallest hints of emotional tones off Camille's face and body language. She's terrified about a dungeon person. I worry about nothing. You waste your time, kill your prisoners, and be about your business of heroism. Camille snapped at them, grinding her teeth in frustration. Anesh held up a single finger to James' lips as soon as James tried to open his mouth. That's an obvious attempt at a distraction, he said. James rolled his eyes. I know that, he said. Honestly, he wasn't that transparently single-minded, and Camille, for all that she could punch trees in half, wasn't exactly a skilled manipulator. Look, he addressed the armored woman. I get it. It's not exactly subtle. You're worried that if this works, there'll be a life form on this planet that's a massive threat to your father. What with his seeming weakness to dungeons for some reason. You don't need to explain yourself to us, but being standoffish because you don't know how to manage your fears isn't helpful. You want this thing stopped before it's a problem? Help us stop it. Everyone wins. He didn't smile. He didn't try to add on extra information or arguments. James just applied everything he'd picked up, from the professional socialites in the Order, and from different parts of a dozen different orbs. He turned it all on Camille. A rock-solid wall of believable, possibly naive-sounding heroism that she could make use of to accomplish what she truly wanted. It would, of course, be so easy for her, because James was the good guy. Even Anesh saw him that way, to a fault. And when she slowly nodded, he wasn't even that surprised, because Camille, James had already figured out, was very bad at manipulating people. And as a corollary, she had even worse defenses against being manipulated herself. James was the good guy, or at least he strived to be a force that did good, but he wasn't stupid. And at the end of this, there weren't a lot of ways out of a messy situation. Because one way or another, as soon as the last line of defense knew that they knew about the potential for something like this, it would probably deem their entire order a threat. Which meant it couldn't know. Which meant, one way or another, Camille couldn't tell it. And while James could see in her the spark of the desire to make the world better, to help people and uplift the weak and lost, he could also see a fierce loyalty to the thing she called a father. He'd written as much in small notes while trying to stealthily communicate a plan with Anesh and Alana. By the end of tomorrow, Camille had to either be with them, taking her own leap of faith to abandon her life and join with the Order of Endless Rooms, or, awkwardly, she had to be dead. The option of her reporting back was not on the table, not with something like the last line of defense on the other side. There would be no future for them if that happened. Very well, Camille said, her emotions solidifying into a plan of action that she was much more comfortable with. With a single nod, she banished the doubt she was feeling. Of course there was an obvious way to help her father. He would understand. We will kill the aberration and its minions. My father will appreciate it. Glad we got that settled, Elle said. So, what are we doing, then? Oh, are you with us? James asked her, legitimately curious. I kinda thought... Dude, my dude, come on. Elle rolled her eyes at him. It is figuratively do or die. What am I supposed to do, sit out? James corrected her without thinking. Literally, he said. Nah, Elle shot back. People always use literally wrong. Anesh looked like he was having the world's largest headache, which James knew wasn't true, since the holder of that title was currently himself. Can we please focus? Do we have a plan beyond go there and start shooting? The site is defended, Camille spoke up. I can feel it. And you didn't say anything because... Camille shot a cold glare toward Alana. My assault sense requires me to be part of said assault. First off, that's a rad power, James commented. We're going to talk about that power later, I promise. Second, defended how? Is it something we can get through? Camille looked like she was focusing into the distance. Sturdy walls, reinforced, 2 trapped doors, a small army, and 1 very large guardian. No, 2. 1 there and 1 on the way. The group was quiet for a bit, thinking individually. Anesh spoke up first. We have thermite for the doors. I don't think any of us could just go through the walls. Well, maybe Cam could. Hit from 2 sides if we want to do that, Alana pointed out. The small army thing worries me. Do we have enough bullets? Rifle won't run out. Mostly a question of if it can hurt them at all, Anesh sighed. We have the earring. He tapped at his own ear. One of us could sneak in. Too risky, James decided. And a very large guardian isn't? Elle asked with a snort. How do you plan to deal with that? Oh, that's easy, James said. A very large weapon. You got one of those handy? Alana asked, saying out loud with a childly curious look on Camille's face, spoke anyway. Maybe a rocket launcher in the trunk, or is that upside down too? James shrugged. It's our modus operandi, he said. I'll think of something. That's a lie at best, Anesh muttered. Anyway, James continued without letting anyone else interrupt, we've still got manipulate asphalt charges left. That's kind of a big gun. Let's use that. Anesh winced. Bad news, his boyfriend said. I tried it earlier, and whether it's the route predation or the mechanic, it doesn't much matter. Any asphalt on the claimed territory snaps out of our control almost right away. Well, James thought to himself, but did not say out loud, that kind of ruined a lot of their biggest weapons. He racked his brain, trying to think of a way that they could make a head-on attack against something that probably knew that they were coming. At one point, he glanced at Elle, who was either also thinking or just staring at the stars for what she might have thought was the last time. And then James started to open his mouth, because he remembered that Elle could do something he couldn't, and even knowing the limitations of her most concerning spell, he still wanted to ask if she could trace them a route to victory. But he didn't say anything, because his first thought was wrong, wasn't it? She wasn't the only one with a piece of magic from the route. James closed his eyes and focused on that new esoteric organ in his chest, the one that held velocity. He was capped out, a full tank of the stuff ready to go, and more than that, he knew in his bones the formula for refilling it. And he had an idea. He had one spell, but it was a pretty good one. Maker's Hand upon the Wheel. He hadn't used it, but he did instinctively understand what it did for him. A big boost in focus, detail work, even creativity, as long as he kept it going. It ate 1 velocity a minute, and he felt, or perhaps knew, that it would let him pull the shit he was thinking of. He did some quick math. Okay, James said. I've got an idea for a big gun. He looked at the other 4 of them with a solemn gaze. Anesh, get the orbs. No use hanging on to them if we're about to die. Elle, go collect car keys and clear this street for us. Cam, keep doing your thing. Alana, go check on everyone. Make sure the prisoners are tied up and the non-prisoners are doing okay. He turned and looked off into the distance, where another echoing crash had just sounded and the flicker of an uncontrolled fire was beginning to grow, casting orange light up into the clouds. We've got 2 deadlines. I don't know which one's worse, so let's not waste time. What's your plan? Anesh asked. James was busy looking at the road in front of the only house on the street with the lights on, the only piece of territory near here that they were sure hadn't been bought or claimed, hadn't been added to the dungeon's control somehow. He hadn't had any trouble manipulating the asphalt here. My plan, he said, carefully, is to ask Alana to fucking floor it to our target. They split the purple orbs, 5 each, with Camille abstaining, or maybe just not being invited. James kind of figured she didn't need any more powers. Shell upgraded. Optics, safe lumen threshold, plus 18,300. Shell upgraded. Considered reaction time, minus 1.8 seconds. Shell upgraded. Ligament tensile strength, plus 88 psi. Shell upgraded. Radiosynthesis, dermal absorption, X-ray, 3% capture rate. Shell upgraded. Minus 3 broken bones per year. I'm glad we have one of the broken bone ones here, James said as he finished. Honestly, we should maybe have waited a week to duplicate a full superpower suite for ourselves. First of all, none of those are duplicates. That's a coincidence, Anesh told him. Also, if we'd waited a week, this whole town would be gone and we'd be too late. Right, good point, James conceded, while Anesh got to work on his own purples. Anesh had a kind of different style than James for these. He liked to savor each one. Well, not savor exactly, but consider at least with a passing thought. Not just let the magic pile up and deal with it all in one lump sum. Shell upgraded. Liver processing, plus 3 ounces per day. Interesting, but not useful here, and Anesh didn't really drink. Probably not bad for his health, though, assuming he survived the night. Shell upgraded. Lift capacity. Arms, plus 120 pounds. While it was worded strangely, fundamentally this just gave him muscle mass and the capability to do what it said. Anesh used to get worried about the specifics of orbs like this, but none of them seemed to slow him down, so he filed it under passively useful and moved on. Shell upgraded. Refractory period, minus 3 minutes. He'd tell James about this later, if they lived. Shell upgraded. Tooth regrowth, plus 1 per month. That one had better not hit his wisdom teeth. And finally, Shell upgraded. Optics, vision range, plus 5 degrees. Anesh felt his worldview literally expand, and considered complaining that this wasn't the correct use of the word range, but it would come in handy, and the magic of the orb already made him comfortable with his new way of seeing the world. Oh man, I love these things, Elle said. I only ever got 2 when I visited. Are you sure I can just have them? Well, you gave me a map spell, so it seems fair, James shrugged. Also, every bit counts in times like this. Elle just grinned and followed his own example, slamming her hands together and breaking all 5 at once. Shell upgraded. Memory, long term. Fast retention, plus 1.2 months per memorization minute. Shell upgraded. Safe dose. Chlorine, plus 11 ounces. Shell upgraded. Skin durability, tensile strength, plus 114 psi. Shell upgraded. Minus 1 deja vu per year. Shell upgraded. Plus 1 heart. Elle screamed suddenly, shouting and clutching her chest. A chest where a second panicked hammering had suddenly and abruptly begun. What? No! What's wrong? James asked, running over to her side, even as the question was echoed by Elle's mother standing in the door to their home. My heart! Hearts! Elle stammered, breathing heavily. Humans can't have 2 hearts. That'll kill me. She looked up at James with a wild fear in her eyes. I'm not supposed to die? Words came out as a squeak. And while James knew most people would just find her to be overly dramatic, he actually completely understood the feeling she had. Relax, he instructed her, calm and kind as possible. Take a deep breath. The orbs aren't allowed to hurt you, even if they sometimes seem inconvenient. Breathe. He lay a hand on her back, keeping her steady. There you go. Keep breathing. Feel your heart beats. Steady, right? You're doing okay. You'll be fine. Elle took a dozen more breaths, getting used to the sensation before she pulled away from James and let go of her chest, steadying herself and looking down at her hands. She flexed her fingers, then her arms. What the hell? She muttered, still pushing away the fear. Why does this feel so good? Because blood flow is super important for a lot of things, actually, Anesh pointed out. And it sounds like your backup isn't a backup at all, more like your body just got rewired for double the pressure. This is nuts. That's what I was thinking, Alana said, looking down at the orbs in her hand. You know, I have a few memories of these things now, but I still find that to be a creepy factor. She pointed at Elle, who was now prodding her skin over her rib cage. What if I get an extra heart? You are already almost bulletproof, heat-resistant, and I think can control friction, among a dozen other things, James reminded her. Anesh gave him a sheepish grin. Oh yeah, she said, and cracked her own orbs without trepidation. Shell upgraded. Maximum grip strength, plus 66 psi. Shell upgraded. Taste receptors. Fruit, 19,800. Shell upgraded. Lung capacity, plus 2 liters. Shell upgraded. Wound healing time. Flesh/muscle, minus 15%. Shell upgraded. Energy conversion. Kinetic to caloric. Maximum 22,000 joules per day. I'm not sure, but I think at least one of these makes me both more bulletproof and more likely to gain weight. Alana stared at the air in front of her as she processed the mental pings given off by the orbs. James and Anesh both looked at her, then at each other. Well, Anesh said cautiously, before James picked up the sentence. You look like you haven't been eating right, so good. We need to get you some real food when we get back. I'd like that, Alana muttered. And then there wasn't any more time. The fires in the distance were spreading. The sounds of conflict were getting louder and closer. They needed to move, and they needed to do it now. The guns they had were loaded. The armor that was left was strapped on. Camille found a piece of old rebar in the garage to use as a temporary substitute for the super material mace that she had been swinging at Anesh earlier. Elle had cleared the road, and the 5 of them split into 2 cars to maximize their chances of getting through. I'm coming with you, Jean said, standing on the porch and watching James triple-check his precious handgun. He just stared back at her, and then up at the window of the house that Ava was sleeping in. Slowly, he shook his head, and thankfully, Jean didn't argue. Cam rode shotgun with Elle, the young woman's modified cherry-red convertible looking woefully unprepared for battle. James hopped into the front seat of the stupid bright yellow Hummer, which was, annoyingly, the tankiest vehicle that they had on offer. Anesh sat in the back seat, settling in, closing his eyes, and pushing every ounce of speed that he had through the connection to James. Alana joined them in the driver's side. This is way nicer than my last 2 cars, she commented. Leather seats? Air conditioning? Oh, thank fuck, air conditioning. Unable to stifle a grin, James looked over at his partner and shared a smile with her. Leave it to Alana to appreciate the little things when the world was ending. There was just one last thing to say before their newest foray into idiotic heroics. You asked who you were. Earlier, James told her, getting her attention. I think you already know. I think every important part of you is still there. And I say that as someone who has literally been you. You are brave without thinking, kind without question, never afraid to be goofy or let your guard down. Alana looked at him and then snapped her gaze back out the window, blinking away something from her eyes. James wasn't quite done talking, though, yet. You are exactly who you've always been, he told her. You're one of us. The The people who answered when somebody asked for help. Right? He held out a hand over the center console, and after a moment's hesitation, Alana clapped her own palm against his. Right, she said. Great. James closed his eyes and pulled on the refreshed stockpile of asphalt manipulation. Around them, the road bubbled, bits of it rising into the air on tenuous tendrils, before roughly stabilizing into an oblong shape hovering next to their vehicle. With a wordless command, Maker's hand upon the wheel activated, and suddenly James could feel not just the asphalt, but every granule of stone in the mass he had taken command of, every little edge and contour. The blob of it steadied, locked itself into place outside his window, and peeled back layers as it formed into a single vicious black needle. His velocity began to tick down, but he had, with everything in his command, complete and utter control over this missile-shaped chunk of matter. Okay, James signaled his partner, voice tight. Punch it.